Welcome to MSU Today in studio. I'm Jim Peck. We're talking music, and joining me from the College of Music are Dean Jim Forger, Director of the Spartan Marching Band John Madden, and Director of the Jazz Studies Program Rodney Whitaker. Welcome, gentlemen. Nice to have you. I feel like we should almost do a disclaimer. We're shooting this before noon, and having Rodney here before noon, I think, is a rare treat. Because sometimes you don't come out as a jazz musician. You're not out in the mornings a lot, are you?
Well, being in the academic world, it's a challenge because I'm not used to going to bed before midnight, and now I have to get up at 6.
So, well, you seem reasonably lucid.
And I can attest to the fact that he burns the candle at both ends.
Working in a place like MSU that you think of as a major research institution, is it strange? I mean, why music?
Well, MSU is made up of lots of communities, and we have a very tight community. Lots in common. Music has been ever present since the time of the early Greeks. In fact, over our front door, the quote from Plato, music and rhythm find their way to the secret places of the soul. And from that time to the present, it's been valued in society for many reasons. It's great fun. It's an economic driver. And it enhances the life of people in a dramatic way.
And I know all three of you still play professionally, you're still out there doing this, but most professors, I wager, aren't going through their day working with students and then getting out in front of, I mean, in your case, John, thousands of people and playing. That's not something you normally think of a professor going out there and doing.
Although in our world, I think it's very common, that we see each other in our academic settings, we see each other in our performance settings. The idea that we maybe don't have as much in common, I think if you follow kind of our family trees back to where we all came from, there's this really common bond of somewhere music education in the public or private schools affected all of us and got the spark lit, and that's the stem for me. That has prompted me into wanting to follow that path.
Well, and why do you? I guess with each of you, but Rodney, why? You've been a successful musician for a lot of years, played with a lot of people, and I could go on and on with that list. Why teach? Why take that step?
Well, I think for me, some of the best musicians that I thought about this morning, some of the best musicians that I was mentored by were the best teachers. And they decided as a part of, well, I don't think they decided, but as a part of the tradition of jazz, you have to pass on the music to the next generation. It's sort of a responsibility, and you're given that charge very early out. I remember as a teenager when I first fell in love with jazz, I started to teach people about jazz immediately because it was a good news. And that I discovered, I didn't really discover it, of course, but it was great news for me. So I wanted to tell everyone I knew about it. I started having listening classes in my mother's living room. I'd bring all my friends over, check this out. I want you to hear this guy, Charlie Parker. You need to hear Monk. But I also fell in love with chamber music and with Bach, and I wanted people to know about that as well. And so I think I'm driven by the love of music, and I think we share that bond, that it's important to pass on the tradition.
And John, I know in talking with you, you talked about the band being perhaps the best life skills course on campus.
Well, one of the things in our College of Music that's important to us is that we serve majors, and that's a priority, and we grant degrees, but we serve an awful lot of non-music majors. As a community, the MSU community, I think, is enhanced by offerings that we have. As simple as a marching band might be in its basic essence, we exist to perform halftime shows at Spartan football games. It is far more complex than that for the members who come together in this massive organization of 300 plus people and learn some of these life skills that might be team oriented or learning how to work within a structure or an organization, working within a chain of command, things that, and maybe one of the best byproducts is the immense friendships, the support one grows to have for their university. There's some incredible byproducts of the membership, but if you throw all those things on on a palette, you see a list of things that help you way beyond your university years. They start to create a foundation for what successful people are universally, and hopefully that goes on with them to their careers in engineering or as lawyers or teachers. So we're really proud of the other things that band membership gives you.
And we'll be right back after this. One of the responsibilities of a college like this is to turn out students, whole people that graduate and can go take this someplace else. How does that balance with leaving as a musician, perhaps, if you're a music major?
Well, there are, we have a terrific placement record, and there are lots of folks out there that are proud MSU graduates that are working in symphonies and working in ballet companies. They're working in New York in the jazz arena. We have one of the best music education programs in the nation, and placements on college faculties and in public schools. So there are folks that do very, very well. And like any other field, the study of music brings a creativity level, enhances a creativity level, which is terrific in this day and age as folks are going out and sometimes changing jobs. So it's another very positive aspect to the study of music. Some may say, well, it's not exactly the most practical, go get your business degree. Well, we are fortunate because we're following a passion. Most of the students are following the things that they absolutely love to do, and my advice to folks is if you can't live without music, then you might want to try something more traditional, practical, but there are lots of opportunities out there, and you need to follow your passion.
John, we talked about life skills and the things you pick up. When Wynton Marsalis was here at MSU he was in residence here and doing master classes, one of the things he talked about was, with these young kids, about being a person and taking on responsibility. I was surprised, were any of you surprised to hear that come out of arguably one of the best known jazz musicians of our day, talking about, okay, we're here to talk about music, but you need to be a person, be a man, step up.
Well, one of my reactions to that is that there's a parallel with, and I say this to students often, that if our job were just making the music sound good, making the band sound good, it would be a relatively easy job, I think. And it puts the burden on the responsibility, let's say we have as conductors of ensembles, or our colleagues who are teachers in their studio, our colleagues who are scholars in a classroom. It puts the responsibility on those things that go, in my opinion, beyond making the music and cultivating the whole person. So Wynton's comment about what kind of people they become, and through their participation in music, I was delighted to hear that. I think that's profound, because it would be easy to sit back and just hear a young trumpet player play and then say, do this a little bit differently. But getting into who that person is and what makes them tick, and Rodney said it a second ago, I mean, the people we were inspired by were great musicians, but they were probably better teachers. And that to me is a sign of the commitment to that whole. Making the music happen, that's the easy part.
One of the greatest forms of music making is chamber music, whether it's in the jazz setting or in quintets or duos, and it's the art of communication, the art of compromise, the art of making decisions, and it's a very different experience than being in a large conducted ensemble sometimes. So there's a real humanity, and there are lots of life lessons there.
Well, and most people aren't, you bring up a good point, most musicians aren't necessarily soloists. I mean, people are there working together. This is teamwork, isn't it?
Well, I think I agree with that totally. I think about playing in a big band, for example, where you have section leaders, much like playing in an orchestra or a concert band or whatever. However, the difference is you have to follow the phrasing of that section leader, and they change it all the time. And so in order for you to play, third trumpet, second trumpet, fourth trumpet, fifth trumpet, and it to sound like a section, you have to humble yourselves. And that's probably the best life lesson. So you have to humble yourself to follow another person's phrasing. And the same as playing in the rhythm section, I play bass, and I want to solo on every tune, but I don't get to solo on every tune. So I have to humble myself to say my job here is to be the timekeeper and to make the band sound better.
You were nodding your head.
And young musicians sort of have to learn that lesson in sort of the school of hard knocks way. They may boast that they can be the one that could lead that phrase better, and when they don't, it's when a musician creates clutter and the ensemble breaks down, and our role as teachers and conductors is, that's kind of where I think we sort of earn our money, is when we find a way to get that person back on track and teach them the lessons of how to follow and when it's time to lead. And the things we're talking about right now could be being discussed with engineering professors or math professors. It's universal.
Outreach is a big part of what the college is about as well. I mean, it's one of the big parts of the mission. You've worked with kids in Detroit. How do you take these kids who maybe don't know that much about music and tell them not only to take an interest and work hard at this, but also, by the way, you have to be a role player. You're not going to be a star with this.
Well, I think I grew up in Detroit. And I beg maybe not to differ, but I think that many of the kids that we work with have had good music training and are certainly talented. And perhaps maybe their training has come from a different model, where you typically will learn to play in public school and church. And so there's a different sort of training, and for me, that's my upbringing. I mean, I had a combination of all those things. I had early lessons, public school training, and I learned how to play by ear in church. So it's sort of, for me, it's going home, it's communicating with kids that I speak the same language, because I grew up in similar circumstances in a similar environment. I mean, the same environment, really. But I think it's the mission of all musicians, outreach. I mean, we do it without thinking about it. Sometimes it's official or unofficial. I mean, officially we do it in a university, but even if we weren't affiliated with a university, we would still participate in outreach. I mean, that's inherent to being a musician. You play music for other people to enjoy and to listen, and we are constantly trying to communicate and express our ideas and our vision for music.
Does that seem like a natural for you? I mean, hearing that from these gentlemen, is that like, absolutely, this is what we want, this is our goal?
It does. Although I must say that I am a very fortunate person to have the colleagues that I have, because you don't find that attitude necessarily in all schools, and I believe that the faculty at the MSU College of Music are really together and in sync with the broader mission of this university, the land-grant mission, and it does fit very nicely with the field of music in general. But I have colleagues that are out in the schools, out in the community, and students doing the same thing. It is wonderful to see, and they do it with expertise. And it's been great to see, for instance, in Rodney's program, going to Detroit with his students. Yeah. He's mentoring his students, and his students are mentoring other students. So there are really 3 generations there at work interacting, and there's no better way to teach our students than to see the commitment and the expertise of, in Rodney's case, the professors of jazz going there, and then his students that he's recruited from across the country going with him, not just staying on campus, but going with him and working with younger. It also shows an obligation to pass on a tradition.
When I've worked with musicians through various TV shows, I found that this is a group of people who are not without a lot of creativity, but also a fair amount of ego. And I try to I'm not staring at you guys when I say that for any stretch of the imagination.
You have to have ego to get on a stage. You need an ego.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. And as a dean, how do you harness that? I mean, because that's not always an easy thing to deal with, personalities, egos.
I'm not a harnesser. Folks typically, everyone has their moments, and that's a good thing, usually.
Yes, good thing?
I think so. I agree that you have to have an ego to get on stage, although you also have to have humility to work with others. And so a combination of being humble and a combination of having an ego pushes you forward.
I have to cut you off. We'll be right back after this. We've talked about working with students and teaching them about band and the way you do it here at MSU. Did you have to teach him anything about band?
Oh, I think so, a little bit. And he was the first person to greet me. And then we began a working relationship of understanding the role that I had and the vision that he had for me. And I think part of it was his band experience as a saxophonist growing up in New York was different than, say, the band experience that we were having at MSU. So it's been a really positive learning curve, I think.
And how did they sell you on a jazz studies program?
Oh, gosh. Never needed to be sold on a jazz studies program. It was in my experience, although I wish I had many more proficient skills in the world of jazz. It's the American music. It's brought a tremendous dimension to our College of Music, which has many parts: classical, chamber, academic side of theory, history, but jazz brings a terrific dimension, and the faculty didn't need to be persuaded when we had discussions about starting a jazz studies major. There was 100% support from the faculty, and you wouldn't find that everywhere. The other element that makes that possible, who are the people that are going to lead it? And they knew that in Rodney and his colleagues, they had some of the most talented performers and committed educators that you can find in the United States or around the world.
When Wynton Marsalis was here playing, I watched the two of you in the audience, and he had been talking and you were listening, and he picked up a horn at one point and he started to play, and I watched both of your eyes fly open, and there was a certain amazed, stunned look. I don't know what that look was, but I wasn't expecting that from the two of you, being so knowledgeable and being around this all of your lives. Well,
I remember, I certainly don't know him personally. You know, Rodney and Wynton are very close friends, and it was a great gift for us that they collaborated, and we had the students from Interlochen down, and it was a pretty stunning day. And my thought was, after hearing him many times and knowing what I was about to hear, for me the reaction was both in the way he interacted with the students, a master teacher, but I think what got the reaction for me was just the level of artistry, the depth at which he could display his craft and music, and it was completely an expression of himself. And to me, the more I'm around people like that, the more, I guess I just, thrive to be around people like that.
Do you learn from something like that?
Oh, no question about it.
Being a great musician is being a lifelong learner. And in our lessons, the biggest gift that we can give to our students is to give them the key so that they can teach themselves. And listening to someone like Wynton Marsalis or Rodney or a group that John is conducting is an opportunity to learn and grow.
And the best musicians have made it a high priority to continue to stay around people like that inspire them. The best musicians aren't done learning. The master musician, teacher, artists of our profession are putting themselves in places to be able to continually hear and seek more from, the people that they are inspired by forever, for the rest of their lives. That's just sort of a musician's creed. You just have to be around the great people.
Rodney, still learning?
Still learning. I mean, and you mentioned the Wynton residency. The thing that was amazing about him playing, in order for him to get up at that time of the morning or at late afternoon to be able to play while he's up completing a piece is amazing, and still play like that. I mean, I think about, the time I spent on the road with him, and he would be up writing music all day and all night, and we would have a 10 o'clock rehearsal with the orchestra, and you would hear his trumpet at 8 in the morning. I just don't know too many people with that kind of discipline to keep up their craft on the instrument, yet they're a composer and an administrator and all these other things. But I think from watching him and watching many others and watching my colleagues, certainly, I'm still learning.
And I would think that's an important thing for students to see also, that this is, you don't just figure out how the buttons work and then you're good to go for the rest of your life.
Well, I think that you have to create an environment when you're teaching that the students know that you're still learning, and that's okay. I mean, I was talking to one of our colleagues in American Studies, and he was saying one of the challenges of being in the classroom is that you have to come off as being the expert, and that's a challenge. However, there are things that sometimes the kids know that you don't know. Mm-hmm. They just have access to more technology. You know, I remember taking a computer in the class and, you know, doing a YouTube presentation the first time, and the kids came and they had to take the computer for me and operate it for me. But that's I was humble. I said, well, you guys know more about this than me. Come and help me out. And they came and helped me out. And then as I kept doing it, it got better. And so that inspired them to know that they don't have to know everything.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, I could talk with you all of day long, but we are just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for watching. We'll see you next time on MSU Today in Studio. I'm Jim Peck. For more on the show, check out our website.